Okay, so for our project novel, we read Sin, and our topic is threats to democracy in Russia. The main character in this is Zakar. He's also the author of the autobiography of his life, and it features several short stories that are in non-chronological order throughout his life. There's not really all the characters only appear once in each story. There's not a set, like there aren't any secondary characters. There's just numerous characters in each of the short stories. It's set between a period of time, we're thinking between the early 80s and about the early 2000s. It chronicles the fall of the Soviet Union and the emergence of the new Russian Federation. And it has stories from before, during, and after the fall of Russia. And the thesis we came up with is, how does the factors of alcoholism, social class, and the Chechen War threaten the emergence of democracy in Russia? And then we're going to talk about, Eric's going to mention alcoholism, I'm going to talk about the social classes in Russia, and Matt's going to finish it off with the war in Chechnya and how that all threatens Russian democracy and the stabilization of it.
My topic was threat to democracy, alcoholism. As we know from basic knowledge, Russians have a serious alcohol abuse problem, but our job was to research and to figure out how that's intertwined with politics and why it might be a case that Russians have a problem more than other countries. Here's two quotes from the book. As we can see in the first one, 3 bottles a day per person is a serious issue. This means that they are drinking 3 bottles during the workday. This can be detrimental to the quality of work they do, and also it could make them not want to work when they become intoxicated. Obviously, they would be doing their jobs intoxicated. In this case, when he has this quote, he's a grave digger, and they mention digging holes when they're drunk. He's handed a bottle after he's in the hole, and before he gets out, he takes sips of vodka. And also when they go pick up the dead bodies that they have to bring to the grave. The second quote comes from a co-worker of Zakar's. He's feeling a little depressed, so he wants to consume alcohol. If you consume alcohol to feel better, then there's a serious problem. That's one of the major characteristics of alcoholics. Historically, vodka has been the main exchange point between Russia and Russian state and society. One way the Russian government imposes itself on the individual and how society avoids the government, that's kind of the exchange. Russia places a tax on alcohol, so that imposes itself on the individual, but also society goes to bars and taverns and stuff to get away from all the problems that they're having with the government. Vodka has pros and cons within the history of Russia. Vodka has led to a toast to peace. It has been used to toast the peace treaty, but also has helped Russia bring Russia back to war. Vodka has saved Russia from invasion, but also has caused its military defeat. Not only the source of revenue in Russia, but it's also Russia's currency. Russia's greatest political challenge isn't terrorism like America's. It's not the economy or some other global issue. It's the health issues brought by alcohol. Alcohol has killed more people in Russia than cancer, cardiovascular disease, or AIDS, or any other disease you can think of. In 2009, then President Dmitry Medvedev announced his anti-alcohol campaign. He stated that Russians drink about 18 liters of alcohol per year. This is twice as much as the US. This means that the normal Russian drinking man drinks about 180 bottles of vodka per year. That's about half a bottle per day. That's only an average, and as we can see from the quote earlier in the slides, Zakar is well above that average, so there's obviously some outliers between the average of the data. Another staggering fact is that over a 10-year period, the Soviets were in Afghanistan, in the war zone. The number of fatalities amounted to around 14,000 men. Since the collapse of communism, Russia has lost about 400,000 victims to alcohol abuse every year. So as you can see, it's pretty detrimental to the economy. The average Russian man's life expectancy in 1994 was 57. There is about 1 in 4 chance that your death would have some relation to alcohol. Numerous generations of Russia's autocratic rulers have dealt with society's dependence in alcohol. The political history of alcohol in Russia begins with Stalin. Stalin's rule from the 1920s to the 1950s demonstrates the merger between alcohol and politics. This time period clearly illustrates the role of alcohol in the autocratic system. But at first, when under the wing of Lenin, Stalin had to endure a prohibition of alcohol. Lenin wanted to promote a new Soviet man, promote characteristics of punctuality, cleanliness, and sobriety. These are very different than the normal drunken, uncleansed presence of the capitalist past. Lenin wanted to create the new Soviet man. Lenin, confronted by the issue of ending prohibition because of the very needed revenue that the alcohol market would provide, and Russia was slipping into communism instead of capitalism. But in the end, Lenin refused. Therefore, a black market for alcohol emerged, like as we saw in America when they had the prohibition. Illegal distillation of home-brewed vodka flourished. Drunks were still apparent. Violence from alcohol was still evident. So obviously, prohibition really didn't cure anything. But also it hurt the economy because the loss of billions of pounds of grain due to illegal home distribution was evident. In 1925, Stalin ended Lenin's prohibition and allowed alcohol to be legal again. This was to regain the revenue that alcohol produces. Stalin's decision to eliminate the new Soviet man because of economic reasons shows how little progress that has made within the political system. Views toward alcohol now. Putin hates alcohol. He recognizes this problem has been going on for a long time and has impacted the Russian culture and the government severely. In our interview with Dr. Willingham, he stated that Putin will do anything and everything he can do to eliminate the problem of alcohol in the Russian society. He will implement different laws and rules to limit how much alcohol a person can drink so that their work isn't suffered and the economy can flourish. He also wants to place a negative twist on alcohol. He associates it with the lower class, and only peasants get really drunk, and the higher class just drinks to special occasions. And the problem of alcoholism in Russia will never fully go away, but Putin is trying to limit it. So why vodka, other than some other form of alcohol? There are three main points that prove why Russians drink vodka. The bitter cold weather. The vodka warms up the blood in the extreme cold. If anyone's taken like a sip of vodka and felt warm in their blood, then you can relate to this. In fact, there is actually a climate drinking map for Europe. The wine drinking regions are mostly southern, the Mediterranean climates where the crops can flourish. The beer drinking spots are the grain growing regions of Central Europe, and the vodka region are the coldest regions, and include the Nordic, Baltic states, Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, and Central and Eastern Poland. The culture also plays a role in why Russians drink vodka. Russians like to be the biggest and baddest in everything they do. Vodka is far less enjoyable and much more potent than beer or wine. The colorless, odorless, and tasteless characteristics make vodka like rubbing alcohol. The new thing is to make vodka flavored because frankly it doesn't taste that great. We have all seen vast amount of flavors of vodka and very unique ones too. Probably the most unique one I've ever seen was bacon. In our interview with Dr. Willingham, he said that vodka was just the norm for the culture. In America, we are normally accustomed to having a beer or a glass of wine with dinner, but not in Russia. You would get a tall glass of vodka. That is just what their culture is all about. They like the high potency and also the fact that they can get drunk more quick. Overconsumption is just hardwired in their DNA. The cost of manufacturing compared to the amount of revenue gained is astounding. The technology to distill vodka was very cheap and easy. All that was needed was a simple still, a stove to heat fermented mash, and buckets to collect concentrated alcohol. The ingredients were abundant: water from the local river or whatever water source, and wheat from the local fields. And the wheat was harvested at little cost by peasants. At the end of the day, the final product could be sold back to the peasants at a price that was tens or hundreds of times the cost to manufacture. So the revenue was great. Just keep that in mind when you go out and consider buying any top shelf vodka for more than $10. It was probably made for under $5. and this is fatal alcohol poisoning by decade. There is no, this data hasn't been redone, or the research hasn't been redone, so 2007 was the last year. But in 1980s, there was a big drop between 1983 and 1987. And in the 90s, there was a spike between 1991 and 1995. But this is just the amount of people that die yearly of alcohol poisoning.
Alright, so next we're going to talk about social classes and how they threaten democracy in Russia. First we're going to start off chronicles of the fall of the Soviet Union around 1989 to 1990. And after that, Boris Yeltsin became president for the next 8 years from 91 to 99. And he really tried to lay the groundwork for democracy in Russia. Putin succeeded him. He was president from 2000 to 2008. He then served as prime minister for 4 years and is back in office now as president. The Russians really do love him. Not sure why, but they do. Russian democracy is not at all similar to the democracy we're used to here in America or other Western civilizations. There's no system of checks and balances, and the president has a power both the legislative and executive branches of government, while in America's he just has the power of the executive government. He has no law-making capacity. Then we go back, look at social classes throughout historical Russia. They've always had a very sharp divide between either aristocrats or peasants. They haven't really had much of a middle class, which is kind of rare that Russia hasn't had a big revolution until 1917 when the Red Party brought communism. You look back at France and Europe, or France and England, and other countries in Europe, they had revolutions throughout their time in the 1700s. Like I said, they're either very wealthy, which was the aristocrats, or they're very poor, which was the peasants. And they've never really had a history of democracy in Russia, so this is kind of a new thing they've had in the last couple of decades. Before the communism, they were ruled by a czar, and then after communism, they were ruled by the party. When we get to the Soviet Union, we see the emergence of even a sharper divide between the party officials and the people associated with the party, the Communist Party, and the proletarian class, which is the working people. In theory, the party officials are supposed to rule for the working people, the proletarians, and do what's in their best interest. But in practice, as I'm sure we can all guess, this didn't happen. It even came so severe as to the emergence of stores for party officials only, which obviously would anger anyone in the 99.9% that was not a party official. When we look at the social classes in Sin, the very first story starts off called Whatever Day of the Week It Happens to Be, and it features the tramps, which are the poorest and unhealthiest people in society. The story starts out with, we're thinking it's around the time of the fall of the Soviet Union. It starts out with puppies. He has 4 puppies that he's in love with, plays with all the time. That kind of symbolizes a new hope for the new Russian Federation. Communism just fallen, everything's happy and giddy. Then he wakes up one morning to find out his puppies are gone. He automatically accuses the tramps and goes busting in doors in this kind of, as we call it, a project housing type thing right now. But he goes busting in doors, and that's where we get this quote where he said, "If I took a single deep breath, I would catch several incurable diseases which would in short order make me a complete invalid with pus-filled eyes and uncontrollable bloody diarrhea." So obviously these people aren't held to very high esteem in their sanitary conditions. I took the disappearance of the puppies to be that not everything's going to be all rosy. There's going to be problems with the new order, especially since Russia's never had a democracy in their history. But then later on in the story, the puppies do come back. So that does give you another sense of hope that even though it might look rough at times, it's still for the best. Something good's going to come out of it. We go to our problems with the new system. The main one is unemployment. Under communism, there was no unemployment. Everyone was given a job by the party because most of the people worked for the government and were paid by the government. So if you were unemployed, they would give you a paycheck and have you stand on the sidewalk and sweep for a couple hours a day, and that was your job. With this transition where instead of one person, one government body giving out jobs, you have a free market economy where everyone's giving out jobs. So obviously there's going to be some people that are underqualified or don't know the right people or for whatever reason can't get a job. With this new system, the welfare hasn't really kicked in yet. They're still trying to work out the kinks. So these people are kind of, these tramps, which we see in the book, are kind of left without any support and on their own. You also see the beliefs of the old system remaining. The biggest one is Putin. is their leader. He's ex-KGB, so obviously he has some deep Soviet beliefs and backgrounds in his ideology, and like I said before, the Russian people love him. He also has a rich in his pocket. We talked to Dr. Willingham. He said that the rich either completely avoid politics, have nothing to do with it, or they are completely 100% backing Putin. You don't have really a rich enemy, so that just shows the kind of stranglehold Putin has on Russian politics, which obviously is not good for democracy. We look at social mobility. Obviously with communism, there's no social class, so there's no social mobility. We get to the breakup of the Soviet Union, and we see a new free market system, and people have a chance to improve their life and their social status. We see a lot of mobility in those first couple of years after the break of the Soviet Union. People are moving up and down and able to better their lives, have a chance to get rich, join the middle class. Today, it's not as mobile as it was 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago, but it's still more mobile than obviously under communism. And research by Li Lu found that St. Petersburg had a 31.3 upward mobility level, which means that in St. Petersburg, that you had 31% of the people were able to upgrade their social class and economic earning in their lifetime, or their kids were able to upgrade their earning in their lifetime. So that just shows that while it's not perfect, and it's not a vast majority, there's still a pretty decent chance that you can upgrade your life. When we look at sin, there are mainly two stories that I took to incorporate social mobility. The fourth one titled Wheels, and the fifth one titled Six Cigarettes and So On. In Wheels, he's a grave digger, like Eric mentioned, where he's drinking a lot of vodka. It's a low-level job, not very much to it. You just dig graves, put bodies in them, cover them back up. But through this, we see a sense of hope. He's always staying positive. He looks at it as his exercise. It's fun for him. He's able to stay positive and keep his head up and hope that he's going to get better. He's going to get a better job. And we see that in the next story where he's a bouncer at a nightclub. That's kind of considered a middle-class job. And that just shows that even if he was an alcoholic in Six Cigarettes, or in the Wheels, excuse me, he's able to overcome that and get a job as a bouncer. Because really after that, I don't think it's mentioned alcohol very much at all. So that shows that he was able to kick his alcoholism and get a job, get a middle-class job, and make a decent life for himself.
All right, and the part I'm going to talk about is how the war in Chechnya is a threat to democracy today. So the war in Chechnya is depicted in sin in the only chapter called the title, The Sergeant. And during this chapter, Zahar makes numerous statements portraying his feelings about the homeland. And some of these statements includes, I realize the word homeland has no real meaning to me anymore. And he says stuff like, homeland was a time depicted in his early childhood that he no longer remembers or even wants to remember, which I take this to portray when the Soviet Union was falling apart. And at that time he says, and then during the war, when he's talking about this, he says, the idea of human freedom is meaningless because he believes freedom does not really exist in this situation anymore. He feels that when he is fighting this war, that there is no individual freedom, and when people speak of this human freedom, he assumes human freedom is talking something else like nature or something that's not even regarding the freedom at all. And these details alone help us show that there is absolutely no freedom for the people in the war, especially in Chechnya, and along with the people that are serving with the Russian army. And then the war in Chechnya is depicted in the novel is a clear distinction that Russia is having trouble holding a true democracy and having trouble forming it. And then the next thing we're going to talk about is Russia's future in the war. So the overriding perception is that Russia's future and the type of country it will become is determined by this war with Chechnya. And this ongoing war, it's been going on since 1995, and it's had a serious economic drain on the Russian economy, and it's having a huge impact on the loss of human lives. Many European countries have stated that they're going to be distrustful for Europe because they're attacking its own people within its own realm. So as long as Russia keeps attacking the Chechens, they're not going to have any support from the international community due to this simple fact. And that's very few countries support Russia's actions just because of this mere fact. And then Chechnya's desire for independence. So Chechnya's role in this war is that they simply want independence from Russia. They don't want anything else, just for Russia to leave them alone and for them to have their own country. But Putin believes that Russia must control Chechnya. And I pulled a quote out of one speech he made last year, and Putin stated that The conflict can be resolved by 1, eliminating alleged threats to Russia's security, and by 2, transforming Chechnya into a genuinely peaceful and democratic state acceptable to the international community. So this quote alone says that Putin's not going to give up on this country, and that no matter what, as Chechnya won't form to the democratic state of Russia, there's going to be a constant war because Putin says they're a threat to the Russia's democracy, they're a threat to their security, and if we don't keep fighting them, they're going to like come and terrorize Russia and have mass bombings, is what he's saying. And so if this conflict is not resolved quickly, the expense to both countries is going to keep increasing in monetary and human lives. Russia's economy is already weak since the fall of the Soviet Union, and they entered into this war, and they were still kind of like, they were more stable after the fall, but then once this war happened, their economic drain, they started putting all the money into this war, trying to convert Chechnya into a democratic state, which is still not happening to this day. And now they're starting to fight Ukraine again, so it's just going to continue to drain their economy, and more people are going to suffer in lives. And then there was an article that stated if Chechnya does, which is unlikely to happen, go for an independent state, not for an independent state, and join Russia's federation, that they're going to be on a long road to recovery. So Russia's now going to have to rebuild Chechnya from the bombings they have done, help them recover Chechnya back to a normal state, get it running again, so they'll be able to benefit from having this territory in their control. And then the Russian public, this is the citizens' views, and the Russian public is distrustful of the government because Putin keeps restricting media outlets like internet, TV, radio, and what they portray about this war. So the people are hearing nothing about this war. There's a clear absence of information, and this leads to more distrust of the government by the people. So every time Putin's trying to enact a new law or say, this is what we need to do to fix our country, this is what we need to do to win this war, they're being distrustful because every time he says anything that's relating to the war, it's automatically like re-edited or cut out of the media completely so that the public is left in the dark. This is leading to no confidence in the government and a distrust in Putin's administration overall. And then Chechnya's main focus is that they're having a social and economic impact, and there's issues of governments. Putin has found a way to input people from the Russian Federation into Chechnya's government. So he's trying to push these people that are from Russia up in Chechnya's hierarchy of government just so that he can input his beliefs on this territory. He's figured if he gets the political leaders in Chechnya that are on his side, he can make them like control the people and say, yeah, this is what we need to do. We need to join the Russian Federation. And he's just trying to sway the government in ways using money and power that he has and input from people that are from other countries. And then Chechnya's decline. They're going to keep declining because they want to be an independent country. They don't want anything to do with Russia because Russia hasn't changed from its original roots. Russia's original roots is to dominate and control all countries. This has been known back from the previous world wars that Russia's main goal is to control anybody they can around. If they see a weaker country, they're going to enact on it and try to control. And the Chechens doesn't want any part of Russia because they're always attacking their neighbors and they can't have a peaceful resolution to anything. And the only way this is going to happen is for a peaceful resolution is if Chechnya gives in to Putin and his administration. So it doesn't look like there's going to be a quick resolution anytime soon. And then the results of the war. It's been ongoing since 1995, like I said. And then there's been extreme devastation because Russia keeps bombing Chechnya, and there's atrocities that are happening through the Chechen people that Russia's soldiers are going into the Chechen villages and they're like raping the women, then murdering them. They're tearing down the villages, burning them down, and that these atrocities of war like making the Chechen people feel even more distrustful towards Russia because these soldiers are coming in and they're supposed to be trying to help them form to the democratic nation, but instead they're burning down the homes, raping, killing women, children, and these atrocities are one of the reasons that the Chechens don't want any part of Russia. And once they burn down the villages, they leave Chechen refugees, and so there's more than 300,000 Chechens that are now homeless. They're in the countries of Ingushetia, Dagestan, and Chechnya. And the Chechen War is a true test for Russia and their democracy. Putin desires peaceful conclusion, but in Russia's favor by instilling government officials in Chechnya's government so that he can sway them to join the Russian Federation. But the Chechens will not have that. They're only strictly one independent nation. They have no thoughts so far to join the Russian Federation. And there is no support from the international community on either side because this war's been going for more than 15 years and nobody's given in either way. That they're just keep attacking each other, so the international community wants nothing to do with this because Russia's attacking its own people and the Chechens are being so resilient against Russia that they don't want to have anything to the international community doesn't want to get involved and cause another grand world war scheme. And then with this war in Chechnya, democracy continues to be threatened to this day. And then here's the conclusion to our overall project and threats to democracy. It is apparent that from the research we have combined with the novel Sin, alcoholism, social class, and the Chechen War are all key factors that continue to threaten Russian democracy to this day.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. 26